Go ahead, Louise.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Louise Cochon. I have been with Festival Bloomsday Montreal since the beginning, when it was a big idea 11 years ago. And today I'm here to present you our guest, Jonathan. Growing up in the restaurant business and hanging out in the kitchen of his father's restaurants, Jonathan developed a passion for food from a very young age. With training at the Culinary Arts program at Vancouver Community College, he learned the basic principles of classical French cuisine during a 3-year apprenticeship at Vancouver, Le Petit Genève under Gerard Pickler. After obtaining his Red Seal, Jonathan moved to Hong Kong to work at his family's restaurants, where he learned many different styles of cooking, including German, Russian, Spanish, and Chinese. After 2 years in China, Jonathan moved to Montreal, where he became the sous chef at a restaurant in Old Montreal. Jonathan's longtime dream was to teach others the joy of cooking, and this became a reality with the opening of Appetite for Books in 2005. Jonathan will be demonstrating how to bake what he calls the best ever soda bread, and the simplest, a bread which has now become one of the quintessential symbols of Ireland, despite its having its origins in a very surprising location. Ladies and gentlemen, Jonathan Cheung.
Hey everybody, my name is Jonathan. I'm the chef and owner of Appetite for Books. We're a cookbook store here in Montreal. I'm really excited to be here, and I'm excited for all of you to hopefully bake along with us today. We're going to talk a little bit about traditional Irish soda bread. This is actually a really easy dish to be throwing together. If you don't have any bread and you need something really quickly, this you can do super quickly. It is considered a quick bread in the sense that there's no rising agents. Let me rephrase that. There's no yeast as a rising agent. You're actually going to be using baking soda as a rising agent. Now, quick breads or soda bread originated in North America, believe it or not, by early European settlers. But it really started to gain traction in the mid 1800s, especially through Europe, where it can be done super quickly because of the use of, traditionally it was potash, but in the mid 1800s when baking soda was invented, that started being used more often. The difference between a yeasted bread and a quick bread is actually really simple. Yeast, traditionally, when you mix it into a dough, you want to create a lot of gluten strands, and using the yeast to like rise it up and make it nice and fluffy like we have bread that we know of. But quick breads are actually a lot quicker, obviously, because of the use of baking soda and also buttermilk in the dough that helps activate the baking soda, because baking soda needs some sort of acid for it to like kickstart. So all you really have to do is dump everything into a bowl, mix it together, throw it into what we're going to be cooking it in a pot, or even on a baking sheet in a free form. You can easily do that. Traditionally, it was made as kind of like a flatbread or a cake of some sort. But we are going to be making it into a loaf. I really love soda bread because of all the different things that you can do with it. You can make it savory, you can make it sweet, and also you can have it done within an hour. So it's really great when you're having people over and you want to have some bread, but you don't have anything good. There's nothing like that fresh loaf of bread that comes out of the oven that everyone's going to drool over at the table. So I want to show you how to make it. I want to explain to you a few things that we need today. We really don't need a lot. So let's talk about everything that we need to make our soda bread. It's actually really simple and you don't need a lot of things. A nice big mixing bowl to mix everything with a spoon to help scoop out the flour and possibly a rubber spatula to help mix everything together. Today, I will be using unbleached all-purpose flour. We need a total of 3 cups of flour today. Now, feel free to mix up any kind of flour that you want. If you want to throw in some whole wheat flour, by all means do so. I would go with a 50-50 mix of 50% whole wheat, 50% all-purpose. We are also going to be needing a little bit of salt, so 2 teaspoons in total of kosher salt, 1 1/8 teaspoon of baking soda. We need 2.5 cups of buttermilk. And then, of course, we need to bake it in something. Today we're going to be baking it in a enamel cast iron pot. So any kind of heavy bottom pot with a lid will do the trick. We also want to line the pot with a little bit of parchment paper, so have some of that handy as well. Now, for those people who are interested in using a scale to measure out the flour, 425 grams of flour in total is what you will need to measure. So let's go ahead and start baking. The most important thing when it comes to making Irish soda bread, or really baking for that matter, is how you measure your flour. It is very important that flour is measured properly. Ideally, you want to do it with a scale, but I understand that not everybody has a scale. So how you scoop and measure flour in your 1 cup scoop is really important. Now, a lot of times when you're going to grab your flour, it's been sitting there for a while. So what you really want to do is get in the bag of flour or however you store it, get in there with a big spoon and start stirring it. And what that's going to do is aerate the flour and fluff it up a little bit. It kind of half mimics sifting. So just aerates it and you know, you really don't want to be measuring compacted flour. So the proper way to measure flour is to take a big spoon like so, give the flour a good mix, and then with a spoon, very, very simply, just lightly spoon it into your measuring cup. And you want to do it till it's like pretty much overflowing. And then just with the handle, scoop off, run it along the top, and that's how you measure a perfect 1 cup of flour. So like I mentioned before, we need about 3 cups of flour. So I'm just gonna scoop in again. Now, this is a great technique for anything that you use flour for. Now, if you find that your baking ends up to be possibly a little dry, a little bit tough, it's very possible you're over measuring your flour. So that's why scales are really helpful, but this is also a really great technique to use when you are measuring your flour. So I've got 3 cups of flour here, nice and easy. What we want to do is add in 2 teaspoons of kosher salt. Now, if you're using table salt, regular table salt, I would maybe cut that down by half. But 2 teaspoons of salt is what of kosher salt is what we're going to be using, and 1 1/8 teaspoon of baking soda. Now, like I mentioned earlier, double check the expiration date on the baking powder, because if it is past the expiration date, it's probably not going to rise as much as you want it to. Now, what you want to do is very simply give this a stir around with your spoon to make sure that the salt and the baking powder gets mixed in nice and evenly throughout the flour. And then we want to get our wet. So our wet in this case is going to be buttermilk. Now it's really important that we use buttermilk for this because of the use of baking soda. Baking soda does not activate unless acid is added to it. So buttermilk is acidic or sour. So so that's going to help activate the baking soda. If you're to use regular milk, it just won't have enough acid for it to rise, and we really want this to rise nicely. So for our buttermilk, we need 2.5 cups of buttermilk. And so that's 2 cups right there. I'm going to measure off half more cup here. And then really simply, all we need to do with our rubber spatula, very gently start mixing this together. Now, how long you mix this really dictates the texture of your soda bread. Ideally, or how I like to do it, is mix it just to the point where you don't see any more pockets of dry flour. So just enough for it to come together. And so what you can do to just double check is give it a quick fold, and if you see any more pockets of flour, or if you don't see any more pockets of flour, I would stop mixing there. Now, if you mix it just to that point, you're gonna get a nice fluffy soda bread. If you wanna mix it for about 20 seconds longer, what you're gonna get is a much chewier soda bread. So it's completely up to you if you want it to be a little bit more lighter and fluffier or chewier. It really that's dictated by how long you're going to be mixing the dough. So I can smell this already, the aromas of the buttermilk, and I can see it starting to puff up very lightly now with the baking soda. So I want to get this into the pot. What I want you to do is preheat your oven to 425 degrees, and that's going to be the perfect temperature for baking this soda bread. Now, when I line my pot here with parchment paper, if you were to just put it in, it's not really going to stay in place. So what I want to do is crumble it up. So give it a quick crumble up into a ball, just like so, and then we'll unravel it, and it's going to be much easier to shape inside the pot, and it's actually going to stay in place. As you can see, we've got a beautiful lining here, parchment paper. All right, so we're going to add this into our pot. Just pour it directly into the middle of this pot. Make sure we get all the little bits and pieces of the batter in here. Scrape the bowl nice and clean. And then if you can, and if it's not quite shaped in a boule, like a round loaf, what you can do very simply is just use the spatula to kind of shape it into a bowl, and I think you're pretty much ready to go. Now, what we also want to do here is with a very sharp knife, I want to score this. So make a deep score right across the middle as well. So we want to make like literally a cross in the bread. You may not see it here because the dough is quite wet, but as it bakes, it's going to end up opening up, and it's going to actually help prevent any cracking or anything. So it's just going to help it kind of rise and up evenly. Now, what we'll do is we'll pop the lid on, and we're going to pop this into the oven. In case you missed it earlier, the soda bread goes into the oven at 425 degrees. Make sure that it is preheated beforehand. And it's going to go in for roughly 45 minutes in the pot with the lid on. After 45 minutes, give it a check. It should be nice and puffed up and risen probably double or triple in size. After 45 minutes or so, what you want to do is take off the lid and put it back in the oven for about 5 to 10 minutes to give that top a nice golden brown, crusty kind of top. So 45 minutes, lid off, and then 5 to 10 minutes to give it some color. Okay, so after our 5 or 10 minutes back in the oven to just give it some color on the top, it's ready to come out. How do you know if it's done? Now, the timing that we have should be pretty accurate, but the only true way of knowing if it's done is using a thermometer. So if you have like a thermometer here, what you want to do is just stick it into the middle of the bread, and what we're looking for is 160, 165 degrees, which I have hit. So that's how I know for sure 100% that it is ready to go. Let's take this out of the oven. And this is what we've got. Not bad. So one of the great things that I love about Irish soda bread, or just soda bread, is the fact that you can kind of play around with it and make so many different kinds of variations. In the recipes that I included with this, I gave 3 variations based off the one base recipe that I gave you. But one of the most common variations of just regular soda bread is spotted dog, which is essentially just a little bit of raisins or currants mixed in with a little bit of sugar into the dry mix. So if you want to make spotted dog, just add a couple of teaspoons of sugar, stir that in with the salt and the baking soda, and add in however much raisins or currants that you want. Maybe 2/3 of a cup, 3/4 of a cup is probably enough. You can also add in different grains, make it like super healthy, and add in some maybe quinoa and some oats. If you're gonna add in some quinoa or oats, like steel cut oats, for example, if you'd like, it's a good idea to soak those overnight in just some room temperature water to soften them up. And then you can mix all of that into the dough just before you pour it into the pot. You can also do a lemon and rosemary or lemon and thyme soda bread, which is actually what I made here. I want to show you a couple of variations that I made using different ingredients. So I made this fresh thyme and lemon zest soda bread. So all I did with this one was added in the zest of 1 lemon along with a teaspoon of fresh thyme or rosemary, whatever you have kicking around. And I want to show you what this looks on the inside. So we've got this beautiful loaf here, and you can see it's speckled with the fresh thyme, and the aroma of the lemon zest really comes out. It's quite delicious. The next one that I made here, really simple, was like kind of like an oatmeal one. Once I poured it into the pot, I brushed the top with a little bit more buttermilk, and then sprinkled just some oats on top, like quick cook oats, to give it that kind of like oaty look to it. And so again, I want to cut this in half, and I want you to see what this looks like inside. So you can see how it's nice and fluffy. I mean, like, you wouldn't even know that this is yeast bread. Not a yeast bread, it's a baking soda. So it's beautiful, nice and fluffy and light, and delicious. So I'm actually gonna cut off a piece of this lemon and fresh thyme one. And what I like to do is add on some butter. So I have some beautiful churned or grass-fed butter, and we're gonna add in like a big smear of it right on top like that. And then what I also like to do is maybe drizzle it with a touch of honey. So I've got some beautiful wild flower honey here, and I'm just gonna drizzle a little bit of honey on top. Beautiful. And just serve it like that, and that's delicious. So here we go. This is our soda bread that we made with a nice smear of butter, a drizzle of honey. With our this one is the lemon zest and fresh thyme. Also really great with rosemary. Delicious. Now, if you're not gonna plow through this whole loaf in the matter of 20 minutes or in one sitting, just put it in an airtight container or a bag or something. It should last for a couple days on the counter. Really great to pop in the toaster. Great with some homemade jam or whatever you got. But for now, I'm gonna stick to my butter and honey. Thanks very much, guys. I hope you learned something. Good luck with soda bread. If you have any questions or anything, feel free to ask. But follow the recipe. You're gonna get something really great. Thanks again.
Okay, hi Jonathan, thank you very much. This was fun to watch. So I'm just gonna show the one that I did, that my husband did last night. Yes.
That looks great.
Thank you. And now some people are asking some question. Did you ask back to the people that wanted to know which Irish cookbook would you recommend?
Yeah, I did.
You did?
It's actually there aren't too many Irish cookbooks that come out. Like they don't come out fast and furious, as you can imagine. But last year, I think around in February, this book called The Irish Cookbook. It was published by Phaidon and written by J.P. McMahon. This is it's. If anybody knows anything about cookbooks, you're probably aware of the big Italian cookbook, Silver Spoon, which was very popular. It's been popular for many, many years. But anyways, it's kind of like the go-to all the recipes of a specific country, and Silver Spoon is Italy. And then this one came out just last year, the Irish Cookbook. Now, I think it's like your one stop for every single Irish dish ever. It's a massive book, really great, lots of great pictures and lots of really easy recipes. The great thing about Irish food is that it's really very it's really simple and easy to cook and very flavorful. So I would highly recommend checking that book out. We usually have it at the shop if anyone's around the neighborhood. And yeah, I don't think you need a whole bunch of Irish cookbooks. Just that one is probably all you need. It's got every single recipe that you'll ever need.
Arlene would like to know any suggestions for alternate baking pot if you don't have the heavy cast iron type.
Yeah, well, any kind of pot will work. Alternately, you can also kind of freeform it. So like very easily just kind of mold it on a lined baking sheet and mold it into like a round loaf, like a round loaf, and then bake it like that. It may come out a little bit flatter than if it were in a pot, but it'll still come out really great. Alternately, you can make small individual ones. Like you can like roll it out like pretty thick. I would say maybe 1.5 inches thick on a, or don't even need to roll out. Just use your hands to gently pat it out and then cut it into like a scone or in rounds, like a triangle or rounds. And you could just bake them individually like that. And that totally works. Now, Irish bread traditionally is actually kind of like a flatbread and cooked in a pan over heat, not even in the oven. So there are some parts, I think in Scotland, the traditional way of doing it is, I think it's called a furl or something like that. And they, it's like a triangle, and it's about, it's about 1/2 inch to 1 inch thick. Good for one person, and so you can easily do that. So cook like individual pieces if it's much easier, or just freeform it on a baking sheet. Just like pour the batter onto a baking sheet and just bake it like that. It doesn't have to be perfectly round. I think this is the great thing about soda bread, is it's really kind of forgiving. You can do whatever you want with it. And I was touching a lot about how you can kind of make it your own. So you made spotted dog, right, Louise, with the raisins or the currants in it. you can do really anything you want. Make it sweet, make it savory. Make one with like leftover bacon if you have leftover bacon. I never do, but like chop up some bacon and grate some, you know, cheddar cheese or blue cheese or whatever you want. Mix that into the batter once it's already been mixed, and then bake it like that as well. That's a really great option. You know, some jalapeno or something. Make it a little bit spicy. But there's so many different ways you can do it, different shapes. It doesn't have to be in a pot. You know, I would even say if you have a big cast iron frying pan, do it in the frying pan. I don't think you necessarily need to even cover it. It's not really necessarily, even especially if it's like spread out a little bit wider. So if you do it in a frying pan, the reason we do it in a heavy bottom pot is just so we can promote even heating and even coloring. Because sometimes ovens can be kind of like, temperature can be all over the place and hot spots in the oven. So different parts of the bread can get different colors, or like a darker, lighter over here.
Mm-hmm.
So if you do it in a pot or a heavy bottom pot, the great thing is that the pot absorbs the heat and makes an even heat all the way around and underneath, therefore giving you an even color all the way around and at the bottom.
Okay, and we have another question. Larry would like to know, if I don't have parchment paper, can I use Spam or lard?
Yeah, you can. I would highly recommend picking up a roll of parchment paper. It's an indispensable tool and really helps with cleanup like crazy. But if you don't have parchment paper, for sure, just put a little bit of oil at the base. I don't recommend tin foil because things just stick to tin foil anyway. So don't bother using tin foil. Wax paper, it'll catch fire. Don't do that. So just directly on a pan. And if you want to rub just a few drops of vegetable oil, don't use olive oil, use vegetable oil before you put it into the pan, then you're fine.
Okay. Another question. Someone is allergic to gluten. Can she make the Irish sourdough bread with the flour without gluten?
There are a lot. Yeah, there's a lot of gluten-free all-purpose mixes, like 1 for 1. I know Bob's Red Mill has, I think it's like 1 for 1. So 1 cup of regular flour you can substitute with 1 cup of the gluten-free flour mix. Now, just keep in mind that the texture is probably going to be slightly different. It may rise a little bit differently, but if you're celiac, you're not used to regular bread anyways, so this will work out just fine for you. So I don't have a lot of experience using gluten-free flours, but I do know that there are a lot of good gluten-free all-purpose flour mixtures out there. Now you cannot just like substitute equal parts all-purpose flour with, you know, whatever gluten-free flour like chickpea flour or buckwheat or, you know, whatever. You cannot just do that. These gluten-free flour mixes are pre-mixed different flours that are mixed together, and they usually contain I think it's xanthan gum to help bind it all together, to help it rise and give that texture of bread, like the strands of gluten. So get a good quality, and like I said, I think Bob's Red Mill is quite popular and very easy to find. Get that all-purpose flour. Most of the time it's like 1 for 1, so you can really just swap out your regular flour with this gluten-free flour.
Okay, there's another question. Someone would like to know, can I use a Corningware work to bake the bread in? It's Robin that is asking.
Yeah, like Corningware, you're thinking, from what I understand, that is like almost like a cake dish or something like that. Or like more glass than ceramic. Yeah, that should work. A round one, if you have a round one, that's great. It does absorb heat pretty well, and you could get, like, I mean, I've baked stuff in that stuff as well, so it should totally work. Just watch the temperature, watch the color. It should work perfectly fine. I think you shouldn't have a problem with it at all.
Okay, and someone would like to know, what did you had a surprise when you opened appetite for books? Maybe you discovered something you didn't know about people in Montreal, or did you discover something that surprised you?
Well, yeah, I discovered that most people, or a lot of people, didn't like the type of books that I liked personally.
Oh.
So that was kind of a learning curve, and mainly because when I first opened the store, I chose all the books that I thought would work in the store, but I was looking at it from a professional cook's point of view. I wasn't looking at it from like a home cook's point of view,
Okay.
which is a big, massive difference. The books that I read are very different than, or the books that I used to read are very different than what an average home cook would be reading. So that was a big learning curve for me of trying to get into the mind frame of a home cook. But along with that, like getting into the mind frame of a home cook in terms of choosing what cookbooks I think people will like, it also really helped me in knowing what home cooks need to learn and how I should gauge how I teach them, right? Because I was so used to teaching, even cooking school students in a kitchen, they have some base knowledge, being that they've gone to school. It doesn't mean they know everything, but they have some sort of base knowledge. So I don't have to overly explain or overly simplify explanations for them. But for home cooks, the terminology that I would use and the terminology that home cooks use are very, very different. So yeah, that was the one thing, is just trying to get into the mind frame of a home cook, because I didn't, for some reason, it didn't really occur to me that the majority of the customers would be home cooks. I don't know why I didn't think that. Obviously it would be, but I was young and dumb back then.
Well, because they come off the street and then they get into your store. I have also another question. Some of my colleagues, they would travel and take back all kinds of flavor from other places, and then with your store, then they can explore more and get the proper book and in the language that they know. Because if they're in Hong Kong and they like certain food, well, they might not all of them can read Chinese, and then they explore it with you. And
Well, yeah, I mean, like the thing with cookbooks that are offering cuisines that are outside of your realm of knowledge, it's a bunch of things. Number one, it's a little bit daunting. Number two, you don't really quite have a taste for the cuisine, so it's a little scary to dive into it. You're wondering if you're doing it the right way or not. But this is why we're here. The great thing about coming to a cookbook store or specialized bookstore in general is that you can go in and ask them any kind of question about the subject that's their specialty, and they can help you, whether you know anything about it or not. For example, we would have the knowledge of what books could work for you at your skill level, at your knowledge, and guide you to something that you would be comfortable cooking with. And so, like you asked earlier about what Irish cookbooks there aren't a lot of them, but I do like the ones that Phaidon puts out. That's the publisher, and they make the recipes fairly authentic and really easy to do. One great thing about Irish food in general is that you don't need an overly specialized pantry like you would, for example, Chinese cooking. You need a whole different type of pantry, all different ingredients. But Irish cooking, anybody can cook it. I mean, it's European cooking. It's usually quite like, as we say, like peasant food, in that it's like very comforting, very homey, lots of flavor. And so this is why people come to us, so that we can help them and guide them. Because like, if you're jumping into a cuisine that you don't know, and you just kind of blindly buy a book, like, you can easily flip through it and be like, oh, that looks good, I can do this, and take it home. And then you look deeper into it. Chances are it's probably not going to work for you, because like, it could just be a little intimidating, all new ingredients that you're unaware of. So this is why you come to a store like ours, and we guide you based on your skill level, your knowledge. If you're a beginner in cooking this type of cuisine, we'll help guide you to a book that is geared towards that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, in fact, I'm wishing you luck when you're going to reopen and attract the people beside you to cook in your store.
Yes, well, we've had a lot of people asking, being that Montreal here is slowly opening up, and we'll be able to start classes really soon. Hopefully by the fall, we'll be fully back in operations and offering lots of different cooking classes for a lot of people. So I'm excited about getting back into that. I haven't taught a cooking class in probably since early September. So it's been a really long time. I'm afraid I might be a little out of practice, but I'll catch up. I think it's like riding a bike. I'll catch up pretty quick.
Yes, I bet, because you look so natural. It's wonderful. So on the behalf of Bloomsday Montreal, I thank you for participating, Jonathan. It was very interesting. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me here, and I'm hoping that everybody out there can cook a little bit of soda bread. If you have any other questions, feel free to email the store. We're at info@appetitebooks.ca. If you have any questions regarding this specific recipe or variations of it, feel free to email, and I'll answer. No problem.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.